All right. It's 12:05. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So thanks so much for joining in today. Really looking forward to doing this painting class with you all. And thanks again for being flexible at the last moment here with the link change. So I have my assistant Denise, who's here to help field questions in the chat box, because once it gets started, I won't be able to really look in the chat box as much. So feel free, if you have a question that seems really important in the moment, like maybe it's about something that I'm demonstrating that you don't understand, or it's not quite working, put that in the chat box. But if you have general painting questions, we will save them to the end. I want to leave about 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A. And at that point, you can sort of, just ask any question you want about art. So great. Well, I'm going to first just tell you a little bit about me. This is the first time that I'm doing this live online painting class, and I'm really excited about it. I taught for a year and a half during COVID. I taught middle and high school art. So I'm experienced teaching art, but this is online, but this is the first time teaching a people that just joined in, here, mostly adults, right? I was always teaching middle school and high school students. So in May of this year, I left my teaching job of 18 years to run Santa Fe painting workshops full time, because after COVID, I really wanted to put my energy towards people that had the passion about learning art. And so I'm really excited that you all are here, because you are my community here who I want to be teaching. And so my goal with these classes is to really start to create a community of people who are interested in abstract art and painting specifically. And, I'm used to a built-in supply of students that they just get registered for my class, right? And so at this point, I'm building my own community of artists. And for 10 years in Santa Fe painting workshops, I've been doing in-person retreats. They're 3-day painting retreats. Actually, some of you are here. I see at least Lee is here. And then I also do in-person private classes, 2-hour classes. And I know that Jude, you're also here, and you took that many years ago. So I've done in-person classes for these past 10 years. And now I'm still doing in-person classes and retreats, but also wanting to teach online as well, so I can reach more people. And so I can expand my community of people beyond just who can visit me in Santa Fe. So let's go ahead and just talk about the live classes. So again, if you have questions, put them in the chat box, but keep the questions that are really relevant if you really don't understand something, or if I'm going too fast, which is possible, then put that comment in the chat box, and my assistant Denise will make sure I get that information, okay? All right, so I think it's time to get started. So the structure of the class for today. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to demo, and I'll talk through what I'm about to do, and then you will have time to do it. And then if you're having a question, will be a good time to put it in the chat box, and then I'll demonstrate another thing. And as you know, with acrylic paint, it does dry fast compared to oil, but you need it to dry to sort of build up those layers. And so if you have a hair dryer today or a blow dryer, that would be great. If you don't, no worries. I have things worked out today so that we'll put a layer on, I'll show you some things, we'll put another layer on, and I'll show you some more things. Okay, so great, let's get started. So one of the most exciting things is a blank canvas, right? And it could also be very intimidating. So I understand that as well. I wear gloves when I paint. And the reason why is I paint a lot. So I'm washing my hands all the time if I don't wear gloves. But also, for example, in cadmium, cadmium is a toxic material if you were to ingest it, let's say, right? Acrylic paint is, I believe, it is less toxic than oil paint, because oil paint has all the fumes and things like that. Acrylic is water-based, but doesn't mean it's totally safe. So if you get paint all over your hands and your fingers, the pigments inside there are actually getting into your skin and getting into your system. And so it's a good idea to wear gloves or wash your hands well, or use some of those, liquid skin materials on your hand. I even just use like a good salve sometimes, and it just washes off really easily. It's like an oil-based salve. Okay. So basically, I'm going to take you through my process of how I started painting, okay? And there's a lot of different ways to do it. So today we're just doing one way, okay? And I always intuitively pick my color at first. Now, we are going to work on color schemes later, but for this first layer, I just don't want you to think about it too much. I want you to just pick whatever color is jumping out at you. At this point, if all you have is red, blue, yellow, white, and black, then I would mix either a secondary color, secondary being purple, orange, green, or a tertiary color, yellow, green, red, violet, so on and so forth. You certainly could start your piece with one of the primaries, but I always think it's good to mix a little bit. So I am going to go with this yellow oxide from Golden. And I will go ahead and put the video on my palette here. This is a palette that I made. It's from the Glass Store. It's an offcut from the Glass Store. And I have a blog post on this actually on my website. But you just get the glass, you get a piece of cardboard, you paint it white, you attach it with duct tape, and then you have a really nice big reusable surface. Now, I'm thinking I don't have probably enough paint there, so let's put a little bit more on here because I have a 36 by 36. That's what I'm going to be demonstrating on today. And then for your first layer, use like a big hardware store brush. These are great. Go to Home Depot and, grab yourself something that, they're like $15. And I always wet my brush first before I apply the paint. And then you always want to apply the paint just the tip of the brush. And then let's go back here. And then at this point, if it's not spreading as well as you'd like, you can use your water bottle to help spread the paint. And if you run out of paint, I'm about to run out of paint, and that's okay. I'm going to put on a slightly different color so I get a little bit of an interesting background. So I'll just demonstrate that real quick. I won't show you my palette, but I'm going to go with a brighter. This is Hansa yellow. The fluid paints are really nice when these are the fluid paints when you really want to work fast. So you see now I have like this really nice bright yellow that's also in the scene here. So go ahead and do your first layer in your canvas right now. Okay, so again, don't overthink your color, go intuitively, just pick what jumps out at you. This should be the easiest step for you. And it's a great way just to get the painting started, okay? So go ahead and do that and I'll finish mine here. Also, don't make it super thick. I'm using a lot of water, as you can see. We want this to dry fast, so it's okay if it's like, more of a staining than a thick layer, right? If we do a really thick layer right now, then it'll take a really long time to dry. And one of the points of this class is how do we work quickly and with layers too, right? I'm using Golden paint. If you've been doing acrylic for a while, Golden is pretty much, I'd say, the best acrylic paint. Just the richness of this color, and I didn't have a whole lot of paint on there. That's a testament to how good Golden is. So we're really moving fast here. We're just covering ground. Okay, we're not worrying too much about our brush strokes. Typically, I also paint the sides of my painting in this first layer. And so if you're already finished painting, maybe you have a smaller piece than me, go ahead and paint the sides of your canvas. And that way, when you finish the piece, it feels really finished. You can always paint it afterwards, but then you run the risk of getting paint on the front of the canvas. I'm also just going to demonstrate this. So here on my canvas, I'm getting so much more paint out of this because I keep spraying with water. And even though it's thin, I'm still getting a lot of paint out of this. So feel free to just use that water bottle like crazy. Okay. Hi, Cinzia. I just see that you're in here from Germany. Great to see you. We did that week-long class together where I taught you encaustic, and I think we did acrylic as well. We did both. And I love to see all your updates about what you're doing these days. Okay, so I'm just assuming that you all are still painting. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about some things while you're painting. Okay, a few more touches there. So let's move in a little bit more. Okay. All right, so about paint. So I was talking about Golden before. So Golden's the best brand, right? And what you'll find with the better brands of paints is that they have a higher pigment amount. And so it's you need less paint to change a color. If you're doing a color mixing, for example, you want those pigment rich paints. I also use a lot of Liquitex, and I'm sure, yeah, there we go. Here's a Liquitex Professional, also a very good choice. They're both fantastic. So, but if you are starting out or you're really trying to find your voice and you find that you go through a lot of paint, I probably wouldn't use Golden, or Liquitex Professional. What I'd avoid is Liquitex Basics because it just, even after it's dry, it wipes off with the wet rag. So I have a whole blog post about this on my website, but and it's called The Best Acrylic Painting Tools to Buy. And I have a list of like my favorite paint brands and like the ones that are professional and then ones that are like more student grade but work really well still that I use in my workshops, brushes, palette knives that I recommend, all kinds of stuff. So if you want that information, check out my blog post after the class. If you go to my website and you go to blog, you'll see where that is. Okay, so does anyone need more time to get this first layer down? Just go ahead and put that in the chat box for me. Just say yes if you need more time. If I don't hear anything, I'm going to assume you don't need more time. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Another little tip here is I always have 2 water buckets. I have a pre-rinse and a final rinse. So I used to do warm and cold colors, but now I found that it works better if I, so this brush was pretty dirty. Sometimes I'll even wipe it off with a paper towel first so you get the excess paint off. And then after this pre-rinse, I go like this to get that excess paint water out. And then we go into this one. And so you can you're not supposed to keep your brushes sitting in water. I will honestly say that I do that all the time. I've been doing that for many years and I've had these brushes for many years. But best practice is to just kind of wet it, right? And like keep it somewhere aside so it's still wet and you can still use it. But what I found, if your paintbrush pulls away from the brush pulls away from like the stick, you get Tyvek tape. It's what they use in construction. I don't know if you can see that Tyvek tape. It's white, Tyvek, and that it just glues it back together, and it's waterproof, so they'll stay forever. Okay, so nobody's saying that they're needing more time, so let's keep going. All right, we've got our first layer down, and now we are going to choose our color scheme. Okay, so color scheme is basically the colors that you choose for your painting. It's the palette that you choose. And I have my color wheel here. So I have internalized color theories. I've been painting for a long time. So I often don't say, oh, I'm going to do a triadic color scheme today. However, there are times when I do that because I find that, and I'm sure you guys feel the same, when you have so many options, you don't even know where to start. And then your painting has all these crazy colors in it, right? So we don't want that. So I think it's a good idea and a good practice to use a color scheme. And today I was going to do a tetrad, which is 2 sets of complementaries. And I realized it's a little bit complicated. And so we're going to go actually with a split complementary. Okay, so what is that? Split complementary. So the complementary colors are the ones that are opposite in the color wheel. Okay, so orange and blue, red and green, yellow and purple. So those colors that are opposite the color wheel, they form a really high contrast to each other. There's a big pop that you get. Okay, so today we're talking about how to pop your paintings, right, with color. And so this would be like really high contrast per red, violet, purple, or sorry, violet, red, and yellow, green. But we're going to do what's called split complementary. If we're starting with violet, red, which is my favorite color, you go across, you don't use this, you actually use these 2, which is green and yellow. And so that would be the 3 colors, your 3 main colors: white, black, brown. Well, you can make your own brown. So forget brown for right now. White and black don't count. Okay. So you could do any tint and shade and neutral mix of these 3 colors. And it doesn't mean you can't peek a little blue in there or something either. Okay. We don't have to be super strict about it. Really, the idea is that we are trying to have a bit of a guideline for ourselves so we don't go crazy and put so much paint on there that we end up just getting mud. Okay. So I'm going to look here. I always do red violet's my favorite color. So let's do something a little different. So I'm going to choose yellow orange as one of my 3 colors for today. Okay. And then I go across the color wheel and it's going to be purple and blue. Yellow, orange, purple, and blue. Van Gogh used this a lot. If you think about the cafe scene in Paris that he painted, it wasn't in Paris, it was a different French city. Starry Night, a lot of his paintings have yellow, orange, purple, and blue. Okay, so yellow, orange, purple, and blue, those are my colors, okay? So now what we're going to do, now that we've picked a color, we're going to do another layer of paint, but we have to make sure this one is dry, right? So I'm just going to use my finger to feel if it's dry. Mine is pretty dry right now. If yours is not, let's go ahead and let me just demonstrate blow drying your paintings. So here's the thing to remember about a hairdryer and your paintings. So because these are stretched on wood, right, and they are cotton, think about what happens to a cotton shirt when you throw it into the wash on hot and then you dry it on hot. What happens? It shrinks, right? Same thing will happen here. If you blow dry on high for a really long time, the cotton will shrink and it'll pull against the stretcher bars and then it warps. I've done that before. So we want to be careful. If you have a medium setting or a cool setting will take longer, but a medium setting's fine. And you keep moving and you don't do it for super long. Okay, so I'll just demonstrate that. Okay, now to be totally dry, I might have to go a little bit longer, but for now, that's good enough. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about our next step. Okay, so first of all, go ahead and think about what 3 colors you want to use. If you don't have a color wheel, I can hold this up, or you can go online and pull up a color wheel. Start with the color you love and then go across the color wheel and then pick the ones next to it. Okay. So again, I'm doing yellow orange and I actually already have yellow orange here, don't I? Sort of, right? So, so then this next layer, I'm going to go ahead with blue. Okay. And what we're doing now is we're just doing another layer and it's also going to be kind of a loose layer, but we're gonna have a little bit more fun with this layer and we're going to try out some different brushes. So, the Skoda brushes, some flats, more water bottles, and maybe even some a palette knife to kind of apply paint. Okay. So what I'm going to demonstrate here is we've got our violet. Let's grab our violet. I don't have a pure violet right now, so we're not going to do pure violet. We are going to do, okay, I'm changing my color scheme because I don't have the color that I want. So I'm going with my good old fashioned, which I love all the time, red, violet, and green, and yellow. Okay, so those are the three that I'm going to do. And so right now I already have yellow in the background. So I think I'll go ahead and I'll mess around with this green. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to just do a quick demonstration on mixing tints and shades. So you want to have so this is color number 1. Even though you already have a color on the canvas here, we're going to consider this color number 1. So out of our 3 that we're going to pick. So to do a tint, you're going to do a little bit of white here and then a little bit of black. Because it's more interesting when we have different values going on. And yeah, so let's not just use green, right? Let's make it a little bit more interesting. So we'll keep some of this pure green here, and then we'll add some white. This is phthalo green, by the way. Okay, so we've got like a really light green, actually a medium green. And then I'm going to just take this and add it in with the black, and we'll make this sort of dark, really dark color. I'm going to add more green to this. I think it's a little bit darker than I want. And then let's add all of that white there. Okay. So now I have a shade. Actually, this is a tone because it's black and white. It's dark. I have a medium sort of pastel green, right? And then I'm just going to go ahead and do this. Let's just, whatever comes up from this little mix. Okay, so now we have a lighter version of this. And I'm going to go ahead and just lighten that up even more. Okay, so now I will demonstrate using these 3 colors. Again, wet your brush. I'm going to go with my big brush. Match the size of your brush with your canvas. So I have a big canvas. I don't want to use a small little brush right now for some first marks. Maybe for some details later, fine. But I'm going to go big to start off with, especially on this second layer. So again, the second layer we're just kind of having fun with, and it's our first official color in our color scheme. I'm going to start with dark because dark colors move back, light colors move forward. And I'm just free flowing. I'm just going to throw some stuff on the canvas here. See, my brush was wet, so it gave that really nice splatter. I like to try to work from the corners in. Notice I haven't even touched the center. So I'm going to throw in some of the other color, and I'm just going to use the same brush. Ooh, it's almost like a turquoise, which is interesting. So all right, here's why that's happening. So this was a pastel green, right? Why is it becoming turquoise? Because there's yellow under it. So the color under it's changing it. It's an important thing with color theory. Look how I'm kind of, I'm almost like scrubbing the canvas, right? I'm going fast. I'm doing a dry brush technique where you can actually see a little bit under the canvas. We can use the water bottle a little bit more to kind of bring some fluidity into the piece. And now I'm going to just do a different brush for this other color, just so that I have one brush for one color and one for the other. And this brush I wet a lot, so let's see what happens here. Okay, so you see how it's dripping right down. Woo, I am splashing away. Okay, I'm going to bring this a little bit sort of wild right now. So I'm going to bring it together a little bit with a big brush. So, but not as big as the last one. And I'm going to add a bit of white to my brush here because I can see it's getting a little darker than I like. In some areas anyway. So I'm just kind of, quickly going over some things just to bring it together a little bit more. Varying my brush strokes up and down, kind of trying to cover that yellow, but letting some of the yellow come through. And I really like what happened there with the turquoise. So I'm going to mix a little bit more of the green and yellow, the green and white, to get a little bit more of that color in. So at this point, you can go ahead and start playing. Start putting on your next layer with the first color of your split complementary color scheme, and mix a tint, a shade. So mix it with white, mix it with black, or mix it with black and white. So you have about 3 different values to work with. And I'll keep kind of plugging away at this first layer. And I'm just sort of playing and being free, but notice there is a bit of a structure that's starting to kind of pull out here. So we'll talk more about structure in a little bit. I'm going to use the water bottle again just to kind of lighten up that left side. And I'm going to throw some more white in there because I can see, we were going for a darker layer for this layer because, again, dark goes back, but I want to light it up a little bit. And also I want to say something about the painting process and how every painting goes through its ugly stage, and we don't always love what it looks like, right? And we just want to keep painting because it takes days and days and days of painting on something to get to its resolution. And especially with abstract painting. Abstract painting is actually harder than realism because in realism, you're copying an image and you see the colors, you see the form. Here, we're just making it up, right? And so be patient. Try not to get frustrated if you're not loving what's going on because it's going to change. And we can just keep going over it, right? So really just play and experiment and just have fun. I'm just going to make myself stop there because I'll just keep going. So stopping there, this is my first layer, and we're going to let that dry. So this is a good time to kind of work on that, figure out your color scheme, work on that second layer, and let me know if you have any questions. So just demonstrate how to kind of keep your water a little bit cleaner. I guess the only drawback here is that we're going through paper towels, but you can do a sort of a pre-wash with your paper towel and then put it into the water. You can use the same one over and over again. Maybe in the chat box, share your color scheme, what you've decided to do. So while, here in this, what I'm doing is just washing my brushes, getting ready for the next step here. And what I do is if I have some paint left over like I do right now, I get old tuna fish cans or cat food cans, kind of pull the color off to the side. I don't like to waste paint, especially if we're using, good quality paints. But even if it's cheap paint, why waste paint, right? Like, why put more things in the landfill? So I just go like this. Okay, so there's my paint, and that keeps it wet. That's kept my paint wet for days. It's such a good little system, honestly. So just if you have a lot of paint left over after this first, second layer, just put it to the side, put a little, if you have something. If you don't, that's fine. Just put it to the side, bunch it up together, right? Because if it's together, it stays wetter, and give it a little spritz, and then we'll come back to that color later. Okay. So I'm going to go to the next step here in a minute. So just try to finish up this layer. And I know I have a bit of a structure going on back here that's sort of naturally formed, but you really could just cover this with the second layer, and I would just leave a little bit of that undercolor. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving on here. So the next thing when I'm starting a painting that I start thinking about is my composition. Composition is basically your structure. It's where you put the things in your painting. And you can see even just by playing with 3 different colors and just being loose and free, a structure is starting to form here, right? We have like these horizontal lines here, and then we have some here and some vertical lines, and right, and there's some squiggles. And so people always wonder, how do you start a painting? My answer is color and composition. At the very least, composition, right? You plan color because you don't want mud. So because it's because time is a bit limited here, I'm going to stick to rule of thirds composition type, which is a pretty easy one, and one I actually use all the time. I love it. So let me just describe what a composition type is. So rule of thirds is when you look at your piece and you divide it into thirds. And then where those lines intersect, like it would be about here, here, there, and there, are really good focal points. You can see, I'm already starting to pull. I'm actually a bit away from the rule of thirds here, but if I really wanted to go with rule of thirds and this was like my painting, I'd maybe do a really thick layer of a different color that pops out here, right? So that's kind of what we're moving towards here. So now what we're going to do is get to our second color, okay? And let's see here. Remember that I am doing red, violet, and green and yellow. So I'm going to go to the red violet now. And what I'm using is Quinicradone Crimson. It's not, we could put a little bit of blue in there, but like I said, as long as we're kind of close. So if we look at the color wheel, you see that this color is very close to red violet, right? It's not red, it's not purple. So, but it's not exactly red violet. And it's okay, because we're still going to get a really nice contrast against the green with this color, okay? So this time, I'm going to show you how to neutralize this a little bit. So if we think about the color wheel again, let's move this up. My color is red violet. The opposite of that is yellow green. So I can neutralize the color by adding a bit of yellow green. So a little bit of green, a little bit of yellow. And I also love how the Quinicradone Crimson looks with white. So I'm going to put a bit of white on there too. I think I'm going to skip on the black for this. Okay. So let's mix our yellow green. You need a very small amount of green. And this is we're just making this to neutralize the red purple, okay? I know this is a really quick look at this. It's a whole class to talk about this more. But for now, we're just going to talk about how a different color, especially like, what do we have here? A warm and a cool. Cool colors will typically, make the color more neutral and vice versa. So it's not a huge difference here, but we're definitely a little bit more neutral here. And now, and you'll see it more when we add it with the white. So you see that, like, it's actually a pretty gorgeous, gosh, what do you even call that? Like a sienna, like a beautiful peachy sienna type color. It's kind of like a desert color. Okay, let's even go lighter with that. And I'm going to go and put the original color back in here on my palette. So now I have, and I always like to have white on there and black too, but let's just put some white on there. That way I can just work quickly. Okay, so remember my color scheme, red, violet, right? So I've got a neutralized red, violet, and then having some white here too. And now we're going to think a little bit more about the composition, okay? Because now as the painting moves along, you have to think about it more. You have to plan it out a little bit more, right? The beginning's like loose and fun. Although we could be loose and fun to another layer right here and see what comes out, right? But I'm just not doing that method right now. So I'm gonna be a little bit more calculated. So if we want to create some contrast, well, first of all, cool colors move back in the picture plane. Warm colors come forward. Bigger things come forward. So if I go ahead and get my big brush here, and it's a little hard to see, so I'm going to darken that up. That color should look like it's moving forward in the picture plane, okay? Because it is a warm color. I'm going to just exaggerate that a little bit more, and I'm going to apply the paint with my palette knife. Okay, so you can see I'm down here, bottom left, rule of thirds area. I often do a main focal point and a subfocal point. So this might be a subfocal point. We'll see how it develops. But this is coming forward, okay? This is how we pop our paintings. We use contrasting colors, warm and cool. And if you want depth, then think about doing cooler colors in the background. So I'm going to keep using my palette knife, and I'm going to mix a little bit of white into this. And let's bring a bit. So I like to also contrast my strokes. So here it's like this sort of more horizontal blobby thing, right? So maybe here I'll go up and down. And it feels a little small for me because it's such a big canvas. So let's just use the brush here and brush this out a little bit. And then if you do something, you're like, oh, I don't like that. That doesn't quite work. Get a wet rag. Okay, squeeze it out well. Could be an old t-shirt, an old washcloth, something like that. And then just wipe it out. Now I'm going down to the yellow here because the green wasn't totally dry. Okay, so that's where we can get our hair dryer, but I actually don't mind how that looks. So I'm going to go with that. Big strokes with abstraction. You know, let's not do little teeny things, okay? Go big. This is a big canvas. Spread it out. You know, really kind of work the whole piece. I'm going to paint with the rag now, okay? So I just go in like this. So it's right here on the rag. And then let's put a little bit here. I like to bring my color around. We've got it here, we've got it here, we've got it there. We don't have it here. I'm going to just let it come off the canvas a little bit over here. And so we're actually starting to develop a composition here, right? We're starting to develop an interesting structure too. By just doing these loose, scratchy things, we're still kind of sketching, right? Like we're sketching with paint. Some people will sketch with charcoal first, plan it all out. Whenever I try to plan a painting, I always like depart. So think of yourself as sketching still. And then if we love it, then we're going to go a little thicker with some of this paint, right? We're still working kind of thin right now, okay? So go ahead and mix your second color. And if you'd like, neutralize that second color with the opposite color in the color wheel, okay? Add a tint in there. Have the pure color and start adding in some details and think about the rule of thirds, okay? Think about adding these details in these thirds areas, but also bringing it around the piece so that it's not just plop, 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 3 spots, let's work it around the piece. Okay. So I'm going to keep working while you guys are working. Try not to treat the painting as too precious right now. Like, just throw things in. Just do stuff. You have order because you have certain colors, right? That's your sort of order. So let yourself play and have fun and just experiment, because you don't know what you can do until you really just mess around and throw it on the canvas. I'm going really fast, keeping the palette life kind of light here and really kind of big movement, scratching it around. I'm going to do a little blow drying now because I don't want the yellow to show anymore. So I'm just going to do a quick hair dry here. Not hair dry, canvas dry. Okay, so I'm going to use up the rest of my pink paint here, and then I'm going to get into that third color. And I really like using the palette knife. Notice how the areas with the palette knife, they're really sticking out because the paint stays pretty thick. Even though I'm using fluid paints, you know, I really kind of bulk it up on there. And it just makes it look a lot more interesting, gives us some contrast. I want more white in this because I just, for many years, I would never even paint pink, and I'm just really into pink these days. Notice when that happens to you, when you kind of go through a color stage and just go with it. It's super fun. I went through a stage where I just did black and white, brown, silver, and gold, and that was like 2 years. So just go with that, because I think it means we're trying to really sort of understand, you know, a scheme or some colors really well. Don't be scared to go over stuff you already did. We think, oh, we're going to ruin it, right? We have to take risks, or else we're not going to end up with a really constrained piece. I like to put my canvas, I can't quite do it right now, but sometimes I kind of put it in front of the edge here so I can get to the bottom a little better. So that's what I'm doing here. Okay. It's pretty stuck on there. I'm just going to go with it. It's okay. What we're trying to achieve is balance. Lights and darks, big and small, textured, non-textured. So, you know, as I can see that there's like a little bit lacking some balance here. So that's when I'm putting marks down, I'm trying to balance things. There's like a lot of pink happening right here. It needs to be balanced on this side too. You know, and that's why I was using the water to spray it down a bit. I wanted the pink there, but it was a little heavy. I'm going to mask a little bit with my rag. So masking is when you kind of go over your marks. And a lot of times you do it when it's dry, but I'm going to go ahead and just do this right now while it's slightly wet. So that kind of unified a little bit, but now I want to bring some of the water back in to sort of reveal the under layers that are brighter. See how I got really close to this turquoise? I just love that color so much, so I'm just wanting that to come out a little bit more. And I don't want it to drip on this scene, so I'm gonna let it drip a little bit and then I'll stop it. Okay, so third color now. I'm going to show you my palette, where we are here. So I use most of the paint up, so that's good. And look, I have some left here, and I'm going to go ahead and just put that on the piece because it's a really pretty color, and I didn't really get to use that very much. So, and then otherwise, what you can do is just, again, stick the little can on top of this situation right there, and then wipe back your palette each time, because we want it to stay clean. You don't want it to get too crazy. So I just get a wet rag and a water bottle and just keep that somewhat ordered. Okay, so let's just put this last color on here. I really like that color. I'm going to probably want to bring that back in later. Okay. So once again, we are doing a split complementary. So now we did the green, we did the purple violet. Let's get to the yellow. Now the yellow is kind of under the piece, which is interesting. And so like, you know, we're going to add that back in now. I didn't plan that, to be honest. I didn't realize I couldn't find my blue. So this was unplanned, but now we're going to bring yellow back in. I think this Hansa yellow medium is really nice, but it's very, very bright. And so I like the yellow oxide to sort of neutralize that. Of course, you could also use purple to neutralize this. So I'm going to bring some of that yellow back in now. And let's actually, before we get in there, let's just talk about this where it is right now, because we don't just want to keep jumping in. We have to be careful about it, right? And so, you know, at this point, I want to think to myself, what do I like about this? What's working? What needs to kind of go a little bit? And I think it's gotten a bit muddy, right, and cloudy in here. So I'm thinking the yellow could help brighten that up a little bit. And I'm also thinking, as I'm looking at it right now, that I might want to get my wet rag and just sort of pull back some of that masking I did to kind of brighten it up. So let's see if I can do that. Yeah, so you can see that the yellow is sort of popping through there. See, those green drips were still wet because I didn't dry it all the way. So they're pulling up, but I really like how it's giving this stained yellow effect. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to just spread this out a little bit more. There we go. Alrighty, now let's get some yellow in there. So I'm going to start just with the yellow oxide, because this will be less of a highlight and a pop than this. This is a good color to bring out like the highlights, right? And to like really pop it against the scene, right? And this is what I'll do sometimes too. I just hover the color in front of my piece and just think, do I want that? I think that's going to be pretty gorgeous. I might tone it down a bit, but let's start with this yellow oxide. Okay. So I'm going to go with a smaller brush now. So these are flats. This is a filbert. I'm thinking actually the filbert would be good. I also love these little rounds. These will come in later probably. Okay, wetting my brush, and then not exactly where I'm going with this. I'm going to look and see, where does it need some brightness? Where does it need some yellow? So there's not a whole lot of yellow happening back here. So look how I'm holding the brush. I'm holding it on the end here. I'm not like this. is a big difference, right? It really keeps us looser to stay further away from the brush. I'm also kind of doing a gesture technique where you're really just sort of, you're scribbling. You're really scribbling, all right? But purposeful scribbling. I'm going to work off of this yellow-green that's already there. And I'm adding color on top of it because it was kind of muddy. And so this will kind of help reduce some of the mud. Okay. And then a little bit more down here. And I'm feeling like down here we want a little bit more. Okay. Keep stepping back from your piece. Try not to just be really close to it. Like I really should kind of go back behind my table here and really look at it because that really helps me see things better. And then another trick, if you've been in my classes before, is that you flip it upside down because that resets your eye and lets you see it in a different way. And so let's do that. Let's flip this upside down. If I have any wet drips, the drawback will be that they'll kind of like go back, you know, they'll start dripping the other way. So we'll just go ahead and blow dry first a little bit, and then we'll flip it. Uh-oh. Okay, sorry about that. Hair dryer. Oh, it's not working for some reason. That's okay. We'll just go with the drips, dripping the other way. Okay, so now we have a whole different piece, right? And now we've got our focal point up here. So when you see it this way, it should sort of stick out that this is pretty muddy, right? And really a lot of it's muddy. We need some brightness to be coming out here. So I think might be this lighter yellow. It's a good time for that lighter yellow. And let's go ahead and change our brush. So let's go with this sort of medium Escoda, favorite brushes ever. If you have fluid paints, make sure you shake them really well. The pigments do settle at the bottom, so I always shake them before I use them. Okay, and I think I'm also going to use a bigger brush here too, because we kind of need a lot of yellow to brighten this up. So I might just go ahead and start. And I don't want my brush to be too wet, so I'm going to dry it off a little bit. Okay. Okay, so now I'm on top of the easel little edge here so I can get this edge a little better. Ooh, are there tech problems, everyone? I see someone saying that. Could you guys put in the chat box if you're having a tech problem? Like, what is the tech problem, Jude? Can you hear me? I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat box. Maybe you can't hear me. Okay, I'm just going to wait and see if you guys can actually hear me. Okay, no tech problem for Tincia. I'm going really fast like that and pulling it up because then I'm getting more of this dry brush technique. So right here, it's a little hard to see, but I'm getting this dry brush technique, which I really like. Okay, So this is already feeling a lot better. It's funny because I can look at it through the screen too and see different things. So that's kind of fun. Okay. But I mean, there are times when like this painting in a month might be completely different, right? So I just throw stuff down to see what's going to happen. I don't exactly know what I'm up to right now. And that's what I like about abstract painting. Makes it fun. Okay, I think we need some round brush up here and some of that yellow. I threw a bit of white into that yellow too. And that's a little bright for my taste. So I'm going to add, I have a little bit of green on my palette here. I'm just going to go ahead and mix some green yellow here. That's better. Ooh, I like that color, but it is bright. I'm going to put a little bit more white in there. White and black will reduce the intensity of a paint, or of course the opposite on the color wheel. So I've got it here. I really like it. I see the yellow green here, a little bit of a yellow green here, not much happening down here. So let's see, where can I work it in to make it feel like it's coming around? Maybe we just kind of, let's see if we can work it in here a little bit. Actually, I'm going to get the green right into that yellow that's already there. There we go. And that's pretty intense. So I'm going to just use my water bottle, see if I can break through that a little bit. And another little trick for you can use when the painting is not totally dry, you can, or when it's a little bit dry, let's say, you can't use water, right? Because it's pretty much dry. You can also use rubbing alcohol to help wipe some areas out. And so this is rubbing alcohol here, and I'm going to put a little bit on my rag, and that will help just kind of pull off paint a little bit more. So what I'm doing now is I'm reducing, right? So there's additive painting. Additive painting is when you add paint to the canvas with a brush or a rag or a palette knife. Reductive painting is when you remove away, you scrape away, you wipe away, right? Use the water bottle. That actually is a reductive method. And if you really want to remove paint, denatured alcohol works well, but I don't, it's pretty stinky. So I prefer just rubbing alcohol. Okay. So it's really a push-pull. It's looking, yes, Cinzia is actually, I'm just seeing what Cinzia said. She uses a mirror sometimes, and yes, absolutely, a mirror works well too. Now it's really just the dance of trying to sort of finish this painting. And because the drips are going the other way, I want to go back to the other direction and work on it like that. So I think what we need here, so let's talk about what we need, at this point. And I can also slow down. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and take off this person. Bye. Okay, sorry, I had to remove someone. Inappropriate comments. Okay. So at this point, all of our three colors are kind of doing their dance with each other. And what I would do is look at your piece and see if you want to stick really close to that color scheme. The color scheme was a way of us getting started, right? But we don't have to be married to it. And I just really love this turquoise so much that I want to bring more of that in. And the turquoise is not exactly part of my color scheme, but it's okay, right? Like we can depart. It's just a way to kind of have a plan, but we can always depart from our plan. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add more of this turquoise color and the light turquoise, because we have a lot of, darkness. And also this is really becoming our focal point now, right? And notice that it's like the rule of thirds would officially be here. I'm a little bit below that. It's also good to kind of push the rules a little bit. You learn about the rules, like Picasso said, just so you can break them. So, but I want more light here so I can bring more attention. This is kind of getting lost. I'm feeling like this turquoise under this might be really nice. So that's what I'm going to work on here. Okay. And if you have any other questions, feel free to put those in the chat box here. So let's show you my palette. How do you make turquoise? Good question. There we go. Okay, so turquoise is blue, white, and yellow. Okay, so let's see what we have left here. That's really not usable. So we're going to do yellow, a little bit of green, and just remembered I don't even know if I have blue, so that's kind of an issue. Let's see. Oh, look at this. I have turquoise. Haha. Okay, I'm going to cheat and just use this turquoise because I don't exactly have blue right now. But what I would do here is I would add blue and I would add white, and that would get me turquoise. But luckily I have the color that I wanted. So, and I'm going to lighten that up. It's a little bright for me. This is where the golden fluids are nice. I typically use these guys, but because I'm demonstrating, I always demonstrate with the fluids because it's just faster. But when I want to lighten a color, I use the fluids. And man, it's just so much faster than always opening up these bottles. Okay. So now what I want to do, it seems like it's a bit bright, if you ask me. I'm going to take this and hover it against my painting and see if this is where I want to go. It's pretty bright. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another version of this. So I'm going to have this sort of more the saturated turquoise, and then over here I'm going to put just a little bit of the turquoise, add more titanium white. Make sure you have titanium white. Zinc white is a transparent white. You'll use a lot more of it to change the color. Titanium is a very opaque white, and so it changes the color quickly. All right, so there we go. That's a bit more than that's about what I wanted. I might even want to go ahead and take a little bit of this, not a whole lot there. Let's put just a tad of this Quinicradone crimson just to neutralize it a little bit, because it can feel like really saturated if we don't tone these down a bit. Okay, so like, see, I think that's much better. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing, and I'm not going to worry about the fact that I have white on here. It's okay. Let's tone that down too. Okay. And it's subtle what we're doing here, but it really does make a difference. Yes, when do you know when to stop? Well, it's not finished, right, Jude? I mean, this is not finished. Why is it not finished? So to me, it's not finished because the paint is really thin, okay? I mean, this is pretty thick. It's still kind of muddy. We don't have enough contrast. We have a lot of medium values. We have some dark values, but we need more light values to pop it. So when I finish a piece, often I'll go, oh, like I get that feeling, and it doesn't always happen that way, but you have to wait for that wow factor. And if you don't have that wow factor, it's just not done, or it's just not a great painting. And so but it's a tricky question, is when is it finished? And we can talk more about those things after the demo. I'm almost demoing, and then we'll get to Q&A. Okay, so I have some of this medium, and I'm going very fast, very light. I did abstract florals. I mean, very abstract florals for some time. And I sort of can't help myself, I just find myself going back to them. Like, to me, this is a very abstract flower that's going on here. Okay, so I'm really liking, do you see how this is sort of bringing a little bit more lightness here? Also, I'm feeling like I want some of this color, darker color right here at the edge, because if it was an actual flower in nature, like we would have a little shadow there. And so let's go ahead and put some of that in. I'm gonna use my small brush here. Just see if we can't work that in a little bit. Okay, I think that's better. See how that helped, right? It really popped it against. So now we have, again, this is about popping your colors, right? Look at this line. It is really standing out because we have this high saturated, two high saturated colors that are almost opposite in the color wheel. Okay. So I'm feeling good about that. Let's move this turquoise around and let's go to a bigger brush. Okay. So let's see, I'm going to go back. I'm going to stay with this sort of medium turquoise and let's see. My brush is loose. I'm going to have to use that Tyvek tape. Yeah, probably because I keep my brushes in the water. So you really shouldn't do that. Okay. But when you're working really fast and you want to keep your area clean, it's nice to have them all in the bucket. Okay, so we have this like really distinct line that's going up. It's a little much, right? So let's sort of blend that out a little bit. You come this way a bit, bring it this way. Put some in the corner, and I'll probably wipe some of that out. But again, we're just sort of sketching it on. We're seeing how it looks. But notice how the paint's getting thicker now, right? So like it's slowly getting to a more finished place. I might just let that stay. I'm kind of actually, even though it feels very linear, I'm kind of liking that. Because we can always remove that later. That's the thing, is that I don't have to think, oh, I got to get that, like way too straight. It looks terrible. Let it hang out. Later on, you can deal with it if you want to. Okay, a little bit more up here. So I have it here, 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 here. I could use a little, ever so slight call over there off the page here. Okay, now let's get some of the highlight in. And when I say highlight, it's the lighter version of this, right? So we've got this lighter version here we're going to go with. And we'll go on top of this form because this is where we get things to be three-dimensional, right? Is if we actually we might even want to use our palette knife, but yeah, I'm going to use a palette knife for this actually. So to create a highlight, we want to put a lighter color on top of another color and it makes it look a little bit more 3D. So I'm going to get the paint on my palette knife here and put some here. See, and that kind of pops that form a little bit now. So the palette knife, I'm just going fast as well. Okay. And again, just like before, we want to bring this around. So we have it here, we have it here, we have it here. Let's bring it over here somewhere too. Asymmetrical balance. I'm not really working the center a lot. It's like the edges, right? I'm just pointing that out because I think your piece is more interesting when you kind of go off center and use asymmetrical balance. And so I'm not even thinking about it. I'm just by nature not sort of going in the middle there. Okay. So, we have this issue, right? To me, that's like not really working so well. So this needs to be brought together sort of to me for at least feeling like for today it's finished. So before I do that, let me just get a couple more highlights in there. I need one off the page up in the top right corner. Okay. Okay, so that's right. For now, that's good. So I'm going to park those colors to the side and put the can on top, like my little way to keep things wet, because I have a bit of paint left here. And I might, the thing is, if you need to remix this, it can take a lot of time, right, to get back to that same exact color. So first of all, always mix more than you think you need. And then second of all, just keep it wet with the little cans. And you will have it if in an hour you're like, oh, I just need a little bit more of that color, instead of having to remix it. Although it's not like you have to be super exact either. I mean, the good thing is that came from that was a tube color, right? That came from the golden container. So it's not like I mixed it on my own, but I did lighten it and I did neutralize it. So, all right. So now it's like this zone. I almost want more of that, like this color here, because I feel like we're very bright right now. So that was the green and the black. So I'm going to mix up some of the green and the black here, and maybe even let the yellow be into the scene here. Let me just show you what I'm doing. So I've got this teeny weeny amount left. I just keep it on there. So there we go. Let's add some more yellow to that. Okay, that's a nice color. But let's make sure that works in our painting. It's a bit green, so I'm going to add a little bit more black to kind of make it more of, so with your blacks, try to not use like pure black, unless your piece is like black and white, right? Blue, black, purple, black, right? You try to put a little color in there, just tone it down a little bit. Okay, so now I'm really dark. I'm essentially a black right now. And this is a bold move. I'm like a little scared to put this on, because it's going to change my piece quite a bit. This is the reality. I've been painting for 28 years, and I'm a little scared to put this color on right now. Okay, so if you're a little worried, you're like, oh, I don't know about that. Just embrace it and go for it, because you know what? I'm going to get my wet rag ready to go. So get my wet rag clean and ready to go. If I don't like it, I can just wipe it right out. It's going to stay wet for like 15 minutes anyway. But I'm really liking that, and I just feel like it needs to come in a little bit more. And this is the risk-taking part, right? I think my brush is too small. I think I was going small because I was scared. So let's go a little bigger. The thing is, painting is so much about our mentality too, right? Like where we're at in our lives, and are we going to let ourselves take risks? We're going to let ourselves do that thing that feels a little scary, but we should just do it anyway. Or do we hold ourselves back? Now, in the moment, I don't like that. That feels very heavy. So I'm going to get some white and put that on my palette. And I'm going to try to lighten that. I'm also going to get some yellow ready, because I feel like yellow could help this. So it's feeling really heavy to me, and it feels kind of plopped on there. Now I'm trying to blend it around a little bit. I'm still unsure about this color, but I can also use the water, right, to reveal what's under. So, I have a good 5 to 10 minutes here to give this a chance. And honestly, if I wipe this out, it's, you know, it's not going to look exactly the way it looked before. That's okay. Now, for this to work, I feel like it needs to come around a little bit more. Okay, let's put the water in now. Let's put a little bit there, there. And then I'm going to get the rag to kind of blend that out a little bit, because once again, it feels a little heavy. So, and we might want to even get the white paint. Let's get the white paint in there, okay? That might be too much. So we got white paint right here. Because I'm wearing gloves, you know, you can also use the gloves to help lighten that out a little bit. It's really all an experiment, right? Because it's abstraction, and this is coming out of nowhere. We're just painting and trying to make it work, and it's why it's so much harder. Okay, for this to work, I'm going to need to put, and I actually don't mind it, but I'm going to need to put more lightness on top. So, you know, I think this is actually a good stopping place because we only have 9 minutes left. That went really fast. So just going to do a few things just to make this feel like, okay, it's at a really good stopping place. And like I said, next time I would probably come in and I'd bring out some of this yellow. I'd bring some of the light back in. But I'm trying to bring it around, like sneak it in. I don't have a whole lot of paint on here, but I'm trying to sneak it in around the whole piece so it feels like unified, like it belongs in here, like it's not just plopped to this one area. But I don't want to cover up too much because there's a lot of brightness going on here too, right? So I want to carefully apply that. So another question about like, how do you know when to stop? Like stop at a point like this where if I keep going, I might actually kind of mess this thing up, right? Because I might overwork it. I want to get rid of some of these marks. So because I have the gloves on, I'm just going to see if I can't get rid of some of those marks. Okay. Okay, I'm good with stopping this for now. So that's where we ended up. And so again, we start with the color scheme. We thought about our composition, and we thought about trying to get things to pop and contrast each other, lights and darks, cools and warms, thick paint and thin paint. So I'm going to stop painting now, and I am going to open it up for any questions you have about the painting process, about really anything painting or art related. And I'll just be looking in the chat box here. Did anyone actually paint while I was doing this? Were you guys, anyone actually making a painting? Sounds like no, that's fine. It's kind of hard to like listen and paint at the same time. Okay, well, I don't see questions in the chat box unless I'm missing something. Let's see here. Okay. Denise, did I already address the question in the chat box? My assistant here is kind of helping me out with that. So the only question I see here, let's see. I don't see any other questions. Does anyone else have a question they want to ask? Okay. Well, then I will just sort of finish up by saying that I really enjoyed having you all here today. And I hope that you keep painting. I'm going to be offering another free painting class next week. And okay. So, Chintzia, did you have a question then? I can see in the chat box here. Go ahead and type it out if you have a question here. And also in the future, will probably consider doing Zoom instead of YouTube, so I can actually give feedback if people actually do want to paint while they are, in the class here. So, okay. So Lee always ends up with medium values. Is there a way to deal with that from the beginning? Yeah, so from the beginning, if you remember, I started off with a dark color. It was dark medium, but what I would do if I were you, I'd be really strict about your color schemes and your values, your tints and your shades, basically, so that you plan it out. My background's going to be like, I used to start my every painting with like super dark blue. That was like my thing for like years. I don't do that so much anymore. But if I were you, I would just make yourself at least start with a really dark, like almost black. Okay. Some people use black gesso for that reason. And so it's already establishing depth because dark colors move back, right? When I get some water here. Jude, if you could email me your painting, I would love to see it, or whatever's convenient, post it on Facebook, Instagram, or email it to me. I'd love to see what you did today. So that's the thing I would do, Lee, is I would start with dark, okay, and then progressively go lighter. So today I was sort of in between, medium and light for the most part. And the only really dark values I have, and they're not even really that dark, are these. Those are my darks, but I still need some darks in this. This is all very medium values, right? And so it's really just about, I think, starting with them, because it's a little bit harder to add them in afterwards, or add them in later using a palette knife and start small. Like if I were to keep working right now, I'd probably get my palette knife, and I love this dark greenish color. I'd move that in a little bit, into some areas, and bring it out and darken this up so it even pops more. Okay, so great. Any other questions that you guys want to ask before we end here? We've got 3 minutes left. So if you do, just put them in the chat box. But in the meantime, I have 3 things on this YouTube page. One is a survey. If you want to keep doing these classes, it's a survey about what you'd like to see me teach, and also preferred times. The second thing is, if you want to know about these painting classes, I'm doing a separate mailing list just for these online painting classes. So if you're, even if you subscribe to my general mailing list, like you want to get on that one, because that's the one where, if there's a last minute change with the, link like happened today, like that's what I'll use, right? So don't email my whole list. And then I also have, if you're not on my mailing list, then I have a freebie. It's a PDF of my 5 favorite painting mediums. We didn't talk about those at all today, but they're really good to use if you don't use them. And so you can get that freebie if you subscribe to my general mailing list. And all those links are here on this YouTube page in the description of this video. So, and I'm at SantaFePaintingWorkshops.com, and I want to continue to do these classes. So hope you stay part of this community, and follow me on Instagram, Facebook. I'm in all the places, Pinterest, and shoot me a question. If you have a question about your work or whatever, I am really happy to help at this point. So, all right. Well, I don't see any more questions. You're very welcome to those of you who are saying thanks. And I think we're going to end. We're only 1 minute early, so we're pretty much just on time. Have a great day, everyone. See you later.